Welcome to this week's edition of the Paint Box. My name is Jane Roy, and welcome to my studio. We're going to be doing something a little different today. We're going to do a bit of an ink and watercolor poppy demo. It's the final episode of the season. This is the first season of the Paint Box, and I'm happy to say we'll be back in September for season number 2. Welcome to my studio. This is attached to garage behind the house. It's 20 by 20, so 400 square feet. It's not as fancy as some of the other folks, but it really works for me. I used to do some painting inside the house, and boy, was I messy. I also didn't like cleaning up all the time. So in the end, I didn't always get to it. So Glenn decided to turn the garage into the studio for me, and it's been amazing. A one-car garage. I put French doors in. He put heat, great lighting, all the elements required for a studio. I got my coffee and my tea kettle so I can actually sit and kind of contemplate. So this has become the place that my go-to place. What I love about the studio is that I don't have to clean up and I can be really messy. So for this studio, again, it's 20 by 20, so kind of got 3 major components. I have a bit of an idea station, a bit of a table for that, but also it's where I do my sketchbook. It's where I kind of create, look at photos, come up with ideas. And to me, the sketchbooks are actually one of the most important things and the most fulfilling things that I do. Whether it's I'm out sketching, whether it's I'm kind of working through ideas and I'm actually writing in the book. Then there's my actual painting section, which is over here. And what's great about over here is the fact that I can be as messy as I want. The floor is done. You'll see by what I'm wearing. Paint kind of gets everywhere. I'm really messy. And what happens here is, even though I have easels, I tend to use the easels for drawing. Is I use the board, and there is just a couple of screws on the board to act as kind of hooks behind the canvas. I'm not yet stretching my own canvas, but at some point I will. And then basically over here, I've got my paints and my palettes. I've got my brushes, so I'm able to, paint and brush on. I'm able to step back, which is one of the big things that I've learned. Sometimes you just need to remove yourself a little bit and see what you're doing from a distance. So I step back. Paints, brushes, and this is the whole painting area. I do oftentimes paint sometimes I paint from memory, sometimes I paint from observations. Lots of time I paint from my sketches, but I also paint from iPhone photos, and so I'll put the iPhone up here so that I can see. What I like about the iPhone photos in particular is they're small and you don't get caught in the detail. And so, it's one of the biggest things when I was first learning is that I was constantly, trying to get the grass in before I got the composition and everything worked out. And the fact that the photo was small actually helps, because then I don't get caught in. I'm able to actually focus on the shapes. So painting, messiness. Over here this is kind of the clean area of the studio. So I've got canvases that are drying. One side's acrylic, one side's oil. I've also got canvases that are ready to be painted. And I tend to be a great starter, tend to get a little lost, and I'm really working on trying to finish and being okay with the finishing, in part because it always feels like there's something else to do. So I'm really working on the whole aspect of, it's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. It should be done. And then what's over here is drying racks. These came from Guthrie's, also Olga Guthrie. They were there, and that's pretty much it. The only other thing is, obviously, this is a little bit of a sanctuary for me. That I have a chair. I have tea and coffee. I've got books that I'd like to read, and sometimes just flip through the sketchbooks for ideas and things. So it's actually just a great place to kind of be. So let's get to painting. Okay, we're going to do a poppy painting. We're going to do just a very, very quick, it's going to be a watercolor painting, and it's going to be ink, and we're going to mount it on a cradled board. But why poppy painting? I don't know. I just, when I first started and getting more involved, I did what was called 100 Days of Poppies, and the whole idea was to just get practice and get good at it. But I love poppies. A lot of poppies have just been out a few weeks ago, and whether it's the Papa Red against the green, but I think it's also the fact that when I've been to other, like Italy, France, those places, you see poppies in the railway tracks. You see a poppy popping up at the side of the road. You see poppies all over the place. They're everywhere. And I love the resiliency of the poppy. Just the poppy in and of itself as a simple, delicate flower, yet still has this resiliency that can grow everywhere. And so I've just, I seem to keep coming back to it year after year after year. Very, very easy and very simple to do a quick illustration watercolor. Final thing I'd say about this is I can teach you how I paint or how I do this, and that's why this is called a demonstration. I'm going to show you the materials, but really you just got to keep working at it. Learning how to paint is different than doing demonstrations. Demonstrations are amazing, and we will show you how we paint, but until you get out on your own and just keep trying and finding out your own tendencies, that's the only way that you're going to learn how you paint, is just keep trying with intentional practice and having some instruction. And I can tell you, painting is a skill, it is not a talent, and you'll get better and better and better. So let's get to the poppy painting. Okay, so welcome to the poppy painting part of the show. We're going to do a ink and watercolor demonstration. This isn't so much to teach you about how to do ink and watercolor as opposed to just show you how I paint. I am not a watercolorist. I'm not actually a very good watercolor painter, but I love playing around with the medium, and I love playing around with the paints and taking them with me. So what I first have, though, is my sketchbook, because I believe a sketchbook is the most important tool an artist has. So you can see here I've been playing around with some ink and watercolor. You see some sketches of buildings, some urban sketches, some landscapes. But really, this is also where I've been playing around with some flowers, some gouache, and things don't always turn out, and they're not necessarily always very good, but it's where you work out things, you work out ideas, you work out which pens, which paints you like, etc. So then what we have obviously the paper. I am using right now just fluid watercolor paper. It's just an easy block. It's 6 inches by 6 inches. Main reason I like it is because it's already done, and I'm incredibly lazy sometimes when it comes to my paint, but it's already a block. I don't have to create it. Source material, we'll talk about that in a little bit later. Obviously, this is a photo that I've taken and I've printed off. I have a little sock, which I'm going to show you a little bit later, but what I use there. We are going to start with a pencil. This is an HB. It's not necessarily very sharp, but that's okay because I would like light marks. Got two brushes. I have a flat. It's just a 10 flat. That's really good for making lines. I really like flat brushes. In fact, they're my favorite brushes of all. But this tends to be the one I use the most. It's a Klinsky. And it's a round 10, I believe. Holds water incredibly well. Eraser, if there's something I don't like. And obviously the pens. I have everything from a 0.5 micron to, I do like Sharpies, and I do like these Uniballs. But really the pen doesn't matter. What matters is what works for you. Water, very important. And then obviously this is just a little travel set that I use. We're only going to use a few colors from this right now, but it's an incredible travel set. I like the fact that it's small. It's got the palettes right there where you can do your mixing. And we're not going to use all of these colors, but it's got everything that I need when I'm out and about. And the sock. It's like, Jane, what in the world do you have a sock for? Well, the one thing that's missing is paper towels or drying your paintbrush. So what I love to do is I use this, obviously was one of the kids' sock. I cut off the toes, and I do this when I'm doing acrylic or oil as well. I pop it on my wrist, and whenever I'm painting, look, I get to dry my brush on that. First thing we're going to do, source material. This is a photo I took. So when you're learning to paint, it's very important where you get your source materials from. There's 3 places you can draw from. You can draw from photos, you can draw from observation, which means you actually see something and you try to do, or you can draw from memory. When you're learning, sometimes the easiest thing is to draw it from photos and paint from photos because most of the work has already been done. But if you're doing that, make sure the sources that you use don't belong to anybody else. So use your own photos or use photos that you have permission to use, or go to some royalty photos online. There's Pixabay and Pexels and other things, and just Google royalty free images and you'll be able to use them up. So the next thing, colors. Even though we have all of this, I'm only going to use a few basic colors. I'm going to use this. This is like actually cadmium red hue. It's kind of a yellow red. I'm going to use some yellow. Now this is cadmium yellow hue, which is in here. I'm going to use some sap green. Now you can see I've really used my sap green. Sap green is here. I need to fill it up, but I don't actually have another sap green, I think. Do I? Oh, I do. Yep, I do. I have a sap green right here. So that's good. Sap green. I'm going to use a little bit of burnt umber. And so those are the 4 basic colors, but we might draw on a little bit from some yellow ochre. And obviously that's burnt sienna, that's burnt umber. Those are very natural colors as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw, and I'm going to draw on this. And you will notice that we're just going to draw shapes. All I want to do is draw the shape of the poppy. So I want to show you something. Don't try to draw the poppy. The thing to really learn is not to see the details, but is actually to see the shapes behind it. So one of the quick ways is to blur your eyes. Sometimes, you can take photos. You can also pixelate them. I want to show you the shapes we're going to draw. We are going to draw the poppy shapes. And these, in essence, are the shapes. So if all of a sudden, if I were to ask you to draw this, you'd have some trouble. But now let's look at the shapes. If you can see those as shapes, and let's just color them in a little bit so you can actually see them. That's what we're going to draw, and that's what we're going to put down on our paper right now. Okay? So let's start with this shape actually, because I actually like this poppy the best. I like this. So let's start right here. Let's give that some of the most prominent spots. There and then we've got the poppy up above. And then this poppy is just a shape like this. Okay, that's it. And this is another poppy I really like. It's kind of triangle. It's kind of more of a typical poppy shape. So let's just make that a bit of a triangle. We've got a poppy that kind of looks like this. We have a round thing, and we're just going to kind of link these two together. Now that's poppy, and then another poppy behind it. So again, all I'm drawing is the shapes. They don't necessarily have to be good. They just, often you'll find is the more confident you get, the more the shapes actually, better the shapes actually look. So there we go. There are the shapes. Now we're just going to quickly do some of these little, and these are poppy bulbs. I don't know the scientific name. We're just going to throw some in. They're not quite round. They're more elliptical shaped, and so let's just throw some in. Then I want to ground the poppies a bit and put the stems in. So we're just going to put the stems in. And then the final thing for this one is all of this greenery. I'm just gonna play. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna do anything more than that. And so it starts basically the drawing. Now, you've noticed I put the main level of interest right here. It was about a third of the way up. I need to bring it down a little bit, which is part of the reason I like to sketch, is because, you know what, there needs to be some interest down here. So let's draw our eye down. I'm going to put a little poppy in. I'm going to do some greenery that comes this way. And you know what, let's draw our eye down and put some more. And it's just to make sure that there's enough interest down here as well. When it comes to the color, and watercolor, you start with light and you go to dark. I've got those shapes, but what I really want to do is kind of have a few different layers, and the first layer is really, really light. But I think what I want to do is to give the poppy some highlight and to lighten up the poppy to make the red a little lighter. If you want to make red a little lighter, you don't add white. So one of my biggest mistakes when I first started. When you add white to red, it turns pink. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put a bit of yellow. Now notice how I don't always keep this really clean. So we're just going to put a bit of yellow. And I want to put a bit of yellow on the tops of the poppies, because that's, now I should call these shapes, because that's right now where the light is going to hit. So let's put the yellow up there. Then we're just going to run a little bit of yellow through this. And you know what? If you make a mistake, and there's no such thing as a mistake when it comes to art, you just go with it. Notice I've sped through this painting. I want to show you a little bit that I don't like this, and it kind of shows you what happens when you overwork something. And I will continue to work it, and I'll show you later a little bit what it'll become. So I'll turn it into something. But we're going to do this again. Do it a whole lot more simply, and let's start again. So let's go back to our drawing and our shapes, some very, very simple shapes again. So the only other thing I'm going to do is I ran into some problems. I'm just going to remind myself to stay away from the edges. And this is just kind of extra reminders that I really want this to be nice and clean. Just a very, very simple thing. So let's go back to the shapes. So last time we started over here. This time let's start with the main ones, like this main clump. We're just going to basically draw some shapes. So now we're going to go back to, you'll see I've cleaned my water. I'm going to go back to the orange. This is the red. Now, I want a lighter red to begin with, just a little touch of red. And how do we lighten red? We don't lighten and brighten red by adding white. That turns it into pink. We do it by adding yellow. So there's a bit more. It adds a little bit of an orange touch to it, obviously. So this is kind of a red-orange. Okay, so let's go back and do the shapes. And so we are just going to do this really quickly and basically cover in the shapes. We're going to follow our pencil lines. Well, at least I'm going to try to follow pencil lines. If we don't, that's actually okay. The main thing about this is always make sure you're just confident strokes, because if you get it wrong, it doesn't really matter. It's okay. You can do what I did, which is basically do it again. So, okay. There's the first line. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go down here, and this, we're going to we're gonna have a look at the foliage, but we're not gonna put in a lot of detail. So we're gonna go with a sap green, which is in this one, sap green. We're gonna add some of this red. I'll clean it out for the next time, but we're gonna have a bit of green and a bit of red. This is where you can play with a little bit. And we're just going to, and I don't want these two things to touch right now because I want to make sure it's nice and fresh, the colors. Okay, so we're just gonna do this. Okay, I'm gonna put a little bit of yellow in here, and you can see how the yellow kind of joins on the one side. As far as this is called wet on wet, and you see what happens. Put a little bit of, this is yellow ochre. Okay, and we're gonna let that sit. Okay. Well, actually, I have real trouble letting things sit. I just want to put in some of these bulbs. Again, we'll come back to them, but just make sure they're kind of covered for now. Okay. Okay, and we will wait for that to dry, and we will come back. So it's dry now, which is good. We're just gonna, what we're now gonna do is we're gonna put another layer of red on this. And again, this is a bit of the orange red. Okay, so now we're going to just finish up this drawing a little bit. And we've got everything on. You can use a number of different pens, but I'm actually going to use the Uniball right now. And the whole thing about this, again, is just making sure that you show some confidence. So we're going to actually outline and kind of go over our poppies. You can follow the pencil marks. You can follow the paint marks, whatever it is you'd like to do. I do a bit of both, actually, anyways. So there's the finished piece for now. I'm actually just going to sign it. Now remember, this was the original piece that I liked. It didn't like it, so you can see how to some degree you just try again. And there it is. If we have time, I'm going to actually show you how to mat and frame. What I want to show you a little bit is, though, even though I didn't like this, I want to show you something very quickly. I have here a mat, a square mat. It's a pre-cut mat. It's just 2 inches by 2 inches. But look what happens when I actually put it over the piece. All of a sudden, it's a little bit of a different piece. I actually don't mind it. I think something like that. I might kind of do it up. But you see, matting and finishing up a piece to some degree creates something a little bit different. So I do kind of like that look right there. I might actually put re-ink it and put some things together. But you see how, even though something may be a little not so, you don't like it so much, there are ways to around it, or you basically just put it aside and keep trying again. Okay, so we've finished the painting. We took this photo, we basically looked at shapes, and we ended up with 2 little paintings. Now, I have finished and I've mounted it already. So I've mounted this watercolor on a board like this. I've used some glue, some matte medium, which is kind of an acrylic binder. You can use typical wood glue as well if you want. You might want to seal protect the wood with gesso. I like the natural look, so I've used that. I've glued it on. I've used Glen's clamps to use it. I used 2 boards in essence. Again, part of the reason I'm lazy, but part of the reason I choose 6x6 is so that when I put it on here, I don't actually have to trim the edges. If you were to choose a larger block and you were using that, then basically you overhang the edges, and then after it's glued, you come along with an X-Acto knife or some kind of sharp edge and cut it and snip it off to the right size. But basically, use the glue, make sure it's flat, make sure the edges are down, and use something to bind it. I basically put a bunch of clamps around it like this and then let it sit for at least 12 hours. Generally, I make it sit overnight. So there we go. There is the painting. Again, shapes, it looks like poppies, very illustrative, very simple. Anyone can do that. This is not a talent, this is a skill. It can be learned. And then the only thing I would say about this is you actually really need to protect it. You need to make sure that there's varnish. And really, spray varnish is really the kind of varnish you need with the watercolor paper. If you use brush-on varnish, you'll actually reactivate the watercolor and it'll smudge. So let's just put some varnish on. Okay, this is where I call on Glenn to, was able to do it. You take the lid off, spray varnish. Obviously make sure you're in a well-ventilated room. And you know, really you should be doing this 12 inches away. I spray it and then let it sit, and I put a lot of thin coats on it, generally at least 3, but I'll test a little bit with water to see if the water activates again, reactivates, and if it does, then I'll put some more of this on. And then took the painting that I didn't like. It's still drying a little bit, and I probably will go back over it with some ink to just reestablish. And we'll do that when it's a little drier. But what I wanted to show you was there was a painting I didn't like, and you put a mat on it. Guess what? Actually, it looks okay. So sometimes if you look at things in a different way, sometimes your artwork is a little better than you think. Sometimes you need to go away and come back. Main thing is just keep trying. You're not necessarily always going to like what you see, and sometimes you honestly will fail, and if you fail, not a problem. You take your lessons, you move on, and you try again. Try again, and done is better than perfect. The more you finish, the better you actually get. It's pretty amazing. So that's it for this week's edition of the Paint Box. It's kind of exciting. We finished a couple paintings, showed you how to do it, and it's also the last episode of this season. So I had a wonderful time. It was amazing. But we'll be back, and I'll be back for next season. Season 2 starts in September. So have a great summer. Support your local artists. London is an amazing city. So many different things going on. We'll see you next season. Thanks for watching.
I was born and raised in Musqueam First Nation territory by my mother, who spoke Hunkaminam to me. As a child, I ceased using my mother tongue, as to use any language other than English was considered not being Canadian, so I was told. The old people came to me in a dream and reminded me of who I am and where I come from. I have reawakened. My roots are strong, and I'm no longer a silent speaker. My language tells me where I'm from. It defines